It didn't start with a platinum record, a stadium full of screaming fans, or a Grammy in hand. It started with a single moment, small, almost forgettable, that somehow set off a chain reaction no one saw coming. Because behind that moment was an artist the world hadn't noticed yet, but was about to take over everything. The question isn't just how did they rise so fast, it's how did someone who wasn't even supposed to be in the spotlight end up rewriting the rules of fame itself? Before the headlines, before the festival stages, before millions of streams turned into billions, there was just a kid with a voice. No flashy record deal, no powerful industry backing, not even a polished image. Just raw talent, tucked away in the kind of small moments most people scroll past without thinking twice. At first, it didn't look like the start of a career. A shaky phone camera, a dimly lit bedroom, and a voice that felt almost too big for the space it was in. But that's exactly what made people stop. The sound didn't match the picture. It wasn't the kind of rehearsed, filtered clip you'd expect. It was messy, unplanned, and real. And sometimes, real is all it takes. Those early uploads didn't blow up overnight. They trickled out, slowly building a quiet crowd of people who kept coming back just to hear that voice again. And while most beginners chase views with gimmicks, this artist leaned on something rarer: authenticity. Every note carried a weight, like there was a whole story hiding underneath. But here's the thing, even in those early days, before anyone outside of a small circle cared, you could feel the tension, like something was waiting to break. And it wouldn't take long for the world to realize that the quiet beginnings were about to explode into something unforgettable. 4 weeks, maybe even months, the video stayed small. A few thousand views here, a couple hundred comments there. Nothing that would make headlines, just enough to suggest that maybe something bigger was brewing. But then it happened. The moment the internet decided this voice wasn't just good, it was unforgettable. It didn't start with a label pushing a campaign, or a celebrity cosign, or a perfectly engineered viral stunt. It started the way the best internet stories always do, unexpectedly. One clip, just seconds long, cut through the endless scroll of dances and memes. The song choice wasn't flashy, but the delivery, it was brutal in its honesty. You could hear pain, you could hear longing, you could hear the kind of raw emotion that no amount of studio magic can fake. And almost instantly, people began sharing it. Not as a joke, not as background noise, but because it moved them. On TikTok, users weren't just liking the clip, they were stitching it, duetting it, crying to it, pouring their own heartbreak into the sound. It became one of those rare online moments where the music didn't just trend, it connected. Within days, the numbers spiraled. Thousands of views turned into millions. What had been a small circle of loyal fans suddenly became an army of strangers, united by a single voice. Twitter lit up with threads asking, "Who is this?" Playlists on Spotify quietly began sliding the name in between established superstars. And on YouTube, reaction channels couldn't keep up, each one shocked by how someone so unknown could sound like they belonged on the world's biggest stage. But here's the twist. Just as the internet began to crown them the next big thing, the artist made a move that nobody expected. Instead of riding the viral wave into every opportunity handed their way, they chose to step back, to disappear. And in a culture where clout is everything, that decision was almost unheard of. Fans were left with a million questions. Was it fear? Was it doubt? Or was it strategy? What they didn't know was that behind the scenes, something was brewing. A sound, a plan, a song that would turn that first spark into a full-on explosion. Because the shockwave wasn't the end of a story, it was just a tremor before the earthquake. Just when it looked like the path forward was clear, everything shifted. For most artists, that first viral spark is the moment you double down. You chase every opportunity, you grab every stage, and you fight to keep your name in the algorithm's bloodstream. But instead of charging ahead, this artist did the unthinkable. They stepped away. There was no scandal, no public meltdown, no messy headline to explain the disappearance. One moment they were the internet's newest obsession, and the next, silence. Fans who had just discovered them were left confused, even frustrated. Comment sections turned into detective boards. Why did they leave? Did something happen? Are they done with music already? Behind the scenes, though, it wasn't about quitting. It was about recalibration. Viral fame is intoxicating, but it's also fleeting. And while everyone else assumed the silence meant weakness, it was actually strategy. Because instead of letting the internet define their sound, they decided to take control of it. During that quiet period, when most thought they had vanished, the groundwork for something far bigger was being laid. Hours locked away in makeshift studios, endless rewrites, doubt creeping in, then getting silenced by determination. This wasn't a retreat, it was preparation. When they finally resurfaced, it wasn't with another casual clip or a quick feature to stay relevant. It was with something designed to shatter every expectation. A song that didn't just ride a trend, but carved out its own lane. And when it dropped, it didn't feel like a comeback. It felt like an arrival. Because here's the truth. Sometimes stepping back is the boldest move you can make. While everyone else was scrambling to go viral again, they were building the foundation for a career that wouldn't just flash and fade, it would last. And the payoff for that gamble, it was coming. In fact, it was closer than anyone realized. Just when it looked like the path forward was clear, everything shifted. For most artists, that first viral spark is the moment you double down. You chase every opportunity, you grab every stage, and you fight to keep your name in the algorithm's bloodstream. But instead of charging ahead, this artist did the unthinkable. They stepped away. There was no scandal, no public meltdown, no messy headline to explain the disappearance. One moment they were the internet's newest obsession, and the next, silence. Fans who had just discovered them were left confused, even frustrated. Comment sections turned into detective boards. Why did they leave? Did something happen? Are they done with music already? Behind the scenes, though, it wasn't about quitting. It was about recalibration. Viral fame is intoxicating, but it's also fleeting. And while everyone else assumed the silence meant weakness, it was actually strategy. Because instead of letting the internet define their sound, they decided to take control of it. During that quiet period, when most thought they had vanished, the groundwork for something far bigger was being laid. Hours locked away in makeshift studios, endless rewrites, doubt creeping in, then getting silenced by determination. This wasn't a retreat, it was preparation. When they finally resurfaced, it wasn't with another casual clip or a quick feature to stay relevant. It was with something designed to shatter every expectation. A song that didn't just ride a trend, but carved out its own lane. And when it dropped, it didn't feel like a comeback. It felt like an arrival. Because here's the truth. Sometimes stepping back is the boldest move you can make. While everyone else was scrambling to go viral again, they were building the foundation for a career that wouldn't just flash and fade, it would last. And the payoff for that gamble, it was coming. In fact, it was closer than anyone realized. When the silence finally broke, it wasn't with a whisper. It was with a sound so raw, so unapologetically emotional, that the internet didn't just listen, it clung to every word. The song wasn't wrapped in flashy production or boosted by superstar features. It was stripped down, haunting, and brutally honest, like someone had ripped a page out of their own diary and set it to music. And almost instantly, the reaction was different from anything before. TikTok didn't just use the song the way it chews up and spits out trends. People lived inside it. Clips of strangers crying in their cars, late-night confessions stitched over the chorus, couples filming breakups with the lyrics playing in the background. It spread like a shared heartbeat. The track wasn't just popular, it was personal. On Spotify, streams skyrocketed into the millions, climbing faster than industry veterans could believe. Playlists that usually ignored newcomers were suddenly giving this song the spotlight. YouTube flooded with reaction videos, some smiling, most wiping tears. And the comments all circled back to one phrase. This doesn't sound like a debut, it sounds like a classic. But it wasn't just the music, it was the story behind it. Fans knew this wasn't a polished marketing rollout. This was the return of someone who had stepped away, doubted themselves, and come back swinging with something no one could ignore. That authenticity made the connection even deeper. Within weeks, the momentum became impossible to contain. Shows that should have been small warm-ups were selling out faster than promoters could post tickets. People weren't just buying seats to hear the song, they wanted to see if the emotion they felt through a screen could be matched in person. And the moment the lights dimmed and the first note hit, the answer was clear. It wasn't hype. It was real. This was no longer a story about a viral clip or a lucky break. This was the explosion that turned a name most people had never heard into the one everyone suddenly knew. And with that single track, the course of their career shifted forever. But if the internet thought this was a one-hit wonder, they were wrong. Because what came next proved that this wasn't just a spark, it was a fire that was only getting started. Going viral online is one thing. Anybody can trend for a week, rack up millions of views, and then vanish into the endless scroll of the internet. But the real test comes when the screen disappears. When it's no longer about likes or comments, but about standing under hot lights, in front of thousands of strangers, with nowhere to hide. That's where most viral acts stumble. But not here. The first shows were small, intimate venues, low ceilings, crowds packed shoulder to shoulder. People walked in curious, half expecting another internet star who might crumble outside the comfort of a phone screen. But when the music started, the entire room changed. The voice wasn't just as good live, it was better. Stronger, rougher around the edges in a way that felt even more real. You could see jaws drop in real time. This wasn't just someone who got lucky on TikTok. This was a performer. Word spread quickly. Each show felt like a secret that couldn't stay hidden. Fans who had fallen in love with the song online left saying the same thing. You have to see this live? And with every performance, the rooms grew bigger. Coffeehouse corners turned into packed clubs, clubs turned into theaters, theaters into arenas. At each step, the artist didn't just show up, they leveled up. What made it different wasn't just the singing, it was the energy. Mid-song, the emotion would build, and then out of nowhere, there it was, a sudden, explosive move, a leap, a flip, something so unexpected that the crowd would lose its mind. Phones shot into the air, clips flooded the internet, and suddenly, people weren't just talking about the music anymore. They were talking about the moment. That signature move became a ritual, the kind of thing fans whispered about before the lights even went down. Do you think they'll do it tonight? And here's the secret. It wasn't just a gimmick. It was a symbol. It represented everything the artist's journey had been up until that point. Unexpected, daring, a little risky, but unforgettable. By the end of that first touring run, there was no doubt left. This wasn't a viral star trying to survive outside the algorithm. This was a performer who could command any stage, anywhere, and make it feel personal. And in an industry filled with artists who hide behind effects and spectacle, the raw, unpredictable energy of these shows made people feel like they were witnessing something rare, the birth of a live legend. But the stage was only one battlefield. The next test, the award shows, where legends aren't just performed, they're crowned. It's one thing to win over fans in small rooms and sold-out clubs. It's another to walk into a room full of industry giants, the same people who've defined music for decades, and prove you belong there. Award shows are where newcomers either fade into the background or announce themselves to the world. And when this artist stepped onto those stages, there was no mistaking which category they fell into. The first nomination felt almost surreal. Their name read aloud alongside artists they had once only seen on TV, people whose posters might have hung on their bedroom wall. For most newcomers, that alone would have been the highlight of a lifetime. But then came the performance. Under the blinding lights, in front of millions watching around the globe, the music started. There were no distractions, no safety nets, just a microphone and that same voice that had once rattled the walls of a tiny bedroom. And within seconds, the crowd leaned in. Critics later wrote that it wasn't just about the notes being hit. It was about presence, the confidence, the command, the way they carried themselves as if they had been standing on that stage their entire life. By the time the final chorus echoed through the arena, the standing ovation said it all. This wasn't a guest in the room. This was a peer. Then came the trophies. The first win was almost too much to process. Holding that award, staring out into the audience, their face told the story better than any speech could. Shock, gratitude, disbelief. Fans watching at home loved it because it felt real. No rehearsed acceptance speech, no fake bravado, just raw emotion from someone who hadn't yet learned how to hide it. But that was only the beginning. Before long, nominations turned into wins, wins turned into streaks, and the same stages that had once felt intimidating became theirs to own. MTV, iHeart, international festivals, even the Grammys, everywhere you looked, the name kept coming up. And each time, the reaction was the same. They weren't just collecting awards, they were earning them. What made it even more powerful was the contrast. On stage, they were electric, powerful, larger than life. Off stage, they remained almost shy, humble to a fault, thanking fans with wide-eyed disbelief. That balance made every award moment hit harder. Audiences didn't just cheer because they loved the music. They cheered because they loved the person behind it. And soon, the question wasn't will they win again? It was, how much bigger can this get? Because at this point, it wasn't just about applause. It was about cementing a legacy. On stage, it looked effortless. The lights, the applause, the trophies stacking up one after another. But what most people didn't see was the person behind all of it. Because away from the cameras and the deafening cheers, the picture looked very different. In interviews, the energy shifted. Gone was the commanding performer who could silence a stadium with a single note. Instead, there was someone soft-spoken, almost shy, answering questions with a calm tone and the occasional nervous laugh. Fans noticed the difference immediately. This wasn't the typical celebrity mask. it was genuine. Fame hadn't rewritten their personality, and that humility made the connection even stronger. Friends describe them as the type who can slip into the background at a crowded party, not because they're unfriendly, but because they'd rather spend an hour in a quiet conversation than in the spotlight. And that same honesty shows up in the music. Many of the songs weren't written as hits, they were written as coping mechanisms. Private journal entries turned into lyrics. Late-night confessions transformed into melodies. And the stories behind those songs, they weren't easy. They came from heartbreaks that cut deep, from personal struggles that nearly made them walk away from music altogether, from nights where self-doubt weighed heavier than any stage lights ever could. In fact, they've admitted more than once that there were moments they thought about quitting before things even began. But here's the difference. Instead of hiding those cracks, they turned them into strength. Each song became proof that vulnerability could be powerful, that pain could be transformed into something beautiful. Fans didn't just hear the music, they saw themselves in it. Suddenly, it wasn't just one person's story being told. It was everyone's. That relatability is why fans say concerts feel less like performances and more like shared experiences. It's why interviews end up going viral not because of drama, but because of a small laugh, a humble thank you, or an honest answer that feels too rare in today's industry. In a world where most artists project perfection, this one made imperfection their superpower. And that's why the bond with their fans runs so deep. Because people aren't just watching a superstar rise. They're watching someone who feels real, who struggles, who doubts, and who still finds a way to turn those flaws into something unforgettable. But as much as the quiet humility keeps fans grounded, there's one side of a story that belongs only to the stage, a side that has become their unofficial trademark. And it's not a note, or a lyric, or even a song. In just a handful of years, this story has gone from shaky bedroom clips to sold-out arenas, from whispered comments online to the roar of millions chanting every lyric. What started as a quiet spark has erupted into something much bigger, a career that refuses to slow down. And yet, what makes it remarkable isn't just the awards, the festivals, or the viral moments. It's the way every step has felt personal, like the fans weren't just watching the rise, they were part of it. Because this isn't the tale of an industry plant or a manufactured rollout. It's the story of someone who almost walked away before the world even knew their name, only to come back and flip the script, sometimes literally in midair. The vulnerability, the raw emotion, the unexpected risks, all of it has built not just a career, but a movement of people who believe in the journey as much as the music. And now, the real question is what comes next. Rumors of an international tour are already spreading. Whispers of a full-length album keep getting louder. Collaborations, new stages, even bigger arenas, all of it seems inevitable. But if there's one thing the story has proven, it's that nothing about this rise has been predictable. Every turn has been unexpected, every chapter more surprising than the last. So, is this the beginning of the next global icon? Or has that line already been crossed without us even realizing it? One thing's for sure, the story isn't slowing down anytime soon. And the next time you hear the name, don't look away. Because in a career built on moments you never see coming, the biggest one might be just around the corner.